लस्सी पी लें और
ठीक हो जाएगा शाम तक। अभी तो 1.5 घंटे का आराम कर रहा है। इडली खानी है, इडली तो अच्छी होती है।
इसकी वांशु सब्जी हद से अच्छा ठीक है, तबीयत खराब
नहीं, जूस तो अच्छा बोला आज।
अच्छा होने की बात नहीं होती ना।
हाथ में टुकड़ा दी, उसने क्या किया मुझसे? हाथ में टुकड़ा दी थैली।
कस दो कट चुका
ये टिश्यू सब्जी थी वहाँ। ये खबर थी
खराब चला था अब क्या था
अच्छा सरी रेडी वाली
ये दो मैं खबर छाप से लपा अच्छा ये डाल दो तो ये तो मस्त लगती है।
अरे ये हो जाता है पेट में, ये जो चुका पेट का था अच्छी चलती क्या द्वारे लेट मोदा नहीं है पानी चेक कर दिया
हमसे गए खरीद लेता पाँच
गैस क्यों फ्यूज गैस ना ज़्यादा गैस ना दस्त गैस ना
कोशिश करें कम से कम लोग
कम सी नहीं गैस तो ही गई सामान गैस
रेडी वाले से अपन भाई तरीके के रात
रात
रेडी बोल मजा बहुत माचो चोर रोजा तो लोग में तो ऐसे माचो चिंता
कोई वैसे
पकड़ा नजदीक से इंसान
आखिरी पेट पकड़ो तो वो कौन सामान आने
हाँ कुछ खातर शुरू हो
तीन तो मिनिमम होता जो एक टीका नहीं किया पचपन प्राला
Connected to OnePlus 3G.
Evening chanting, page 14. Yo so bhagava arahan samma sambuddho swakato yena bhagavata dhammo supatipanno yassa bhagavato savak sangho ramayam bhagavanta sadhammam sasangam imehi sakar yatarham haru tehi abhipujayama sadhuno bhante bhagava suchira pari bhutopi पश्चिमा जनतानुकम्पमानसा इमे सकारि दुर्गतपणाकारभूते पटिगणातु अम्हाकं दीर्घरथं हिताय सुखाय अरहं
सम्मा
सम्बुद्धो भगवा बुद्धं भगवन्तम् अभिवादे स्वाखातो भगवता धम्मो धम्मं नमस्सामि सुपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संघो संघं नमामि आनन्दमयं बुद्धस्य भगवतो पुब्बभागनमकारं करोमसि नमो तस्स भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्स नमो तस्स भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्स नमो तस्स भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्स आनन्दमयं बुद्धानुसतिनयं करोमसि तं कोपन भगवन्तम् एवं कल्याणो इति सद्दो अभुद्गतो इति पिसो भगवा अरहन् सम्मा सम्बुद्धो विद्याचरण संपन्नो सुगतो लोकविदु अनुत्तरो पुरुष धम्म सारथि सत्ता देव मनुस्सार बुद्धो भगवाति आनन्दमयं बुद्धाभिगीतिं करोमसि बुद्धवार हन्तवरता द्विगुणाभियुतो शुद्धाभियान करुणा समागततो बोधेसियो सुजनतं कमलं वसुरो वन्दामहं तमरणं शिरसा जिनेन्दं बुद्धो यो सब्बपाणिनं शरणं खेममुत्तमं पठमानुसतिष्ठान वन्दामि तं शिरेणहं बुद्धस्यास्मि दासीवा बुद्धो मे सामिकिस्सरो बुद्धासहं नियादीमि शरीरं जीवितं चिदं वन्दन्तीहं चरिष्यामि धम्मबुद्धस्यैव सुधम्मतं नत्ति मे शरणम् अन्य बुद्धो मे शरणं वरम् एतेन सज्जवज्जेन वड्ढेयं चतुशासने बुद्धं मे वन्दमानाय यं पुण्यं पशुतं इद सभेऽपि अन्तरायामि माहेषु तस्य तेजसः आनन्दमयं धम्मानुसतिनयं करोमसि स्वाखातो भगवता धम्मो सन्दिट्ठिको अकालिको एहि पस्सिको ओपनयिको पश्चात्तं वेदितव्यो विन्योहीति आनन्दमयं धम्माभिगीतिं करोमसि स्वाखाततादिगुणयोगवसेन सेयो यो मग्गपाकपरिहत्रिविमोकभेदो धम्मो कुलोकपतन तदधारि वन्दामहं तमरं वरधम्ममेतं धम्मो यो सब्बपाणिनं शरणं खेममुत्तमं उत्तमं द्वितीयानुसतिष्ठानं वन्दामि तं शिरेणहम् धम्मस्सास्मि दासीव धम्मो मे सामि किस्सरो धम्मासहं नियादीनि शरीरं जीवितं चिदं वन्दन्तीहं चरिष्यामि धम्मस्यैव सुधम्मतम् नास्ति मे शरणम् अन्यं धम्मो मे शरणं वरम् एतेन सज्जवज्जेन वड्डेयं साधुशासने धम्मं मे वन्दमानाय यं पुण्यं पशुतम् इद सभ्येऽपि अन्तरायामि माहेषुं तस्य तेजसा। हन्दमयं सङ्घानुसतिनयं करोमसि सुपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संघो उजुपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संघो न्यायपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संघो सामीचिपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संघो यदिदं चत्तारि पुरुषयुगा अट्ठपुरुष पुग्गला एष भगवतो सावक संगो आहुनेयो पाहुनेयो दक्षिणेयो अंजलि करणीयो अनुत्तरं पुण्यक्षेत्रं लोकसाति। हन्दमयं संगाभिगीतिं करोमसि सधम्मजो सुपटिपतिगुणादियुतो यो अट्ठविदो अरियपुङ्गल संगसेठो शीलादिधम्मपवरा सयकाय चित्तो वन्दामहं तमरियगणं सुशुद्धं संघो यो सर्वपाणिनं शरणं खेममुत्तमं ततीयानुसतिष्ठानं वन्दामि तं शिरेणहम् संघस्सास्मि दासीव संघो मे सामि किस्सरो संघस्सहं नियादेमि शरीरं जीवितं चिदं वन्दन्तीहं चरिष्यामि संघस्सोपटिपन्नतं नत्थि मे शरणम् अन्य संघो मे शरणं वरम् एतेन सज्जवज्जेन वड्ढेयं सत्तुशासने संघं मे वन्दमानाय यं पुण्यं पशुतम् इद सभेऽपि अन्तराया मे माहेषुं तस्य तेजसा।
रिसाइट 32 शरीर के 32 अंगों का विवेचन रिसाइट करेंगे।
पेज 42 32 अंगों का विवेचन। हन्दमयं द्वतिंसाकार पाठम भणामसि। हिंदी थी पर आए हम शरीर के 32 अंगों का पाठ करें। अयम खो मे कायो उद्धम पादतला अधो केशम अथका तच्च पर्यंतो पूरो नानाप्रकारस्य असुचितो। यह मेरी काया तलवों से ऊपर एवं सिर से नीचे त्वचा से लिपटी हुई पूर्ण रूप से नाना प्रकार की असुंदर वस्तुओं से भरी हुई है। अत्ति इमस्मि काये, इस काया में केसा सिर के बाल, लोमा शरीर के बाल, नखा नाखून, दंता दांत, तचो त्वचा, मंसम मांस, नहारू नसें, अट्ठी हड्डियां, अट्ठिमिंज मज्जा, वक्कम गुर्दे, हृदयम दिल, यकनम जिगर, किलोमकम झिल्लियां, विहकम तिल्ली, पप्पास फेफड़े, अंतम आंती, अंतगुणम अंतड़ियां, उदरियम पेट में पड़ा भोजन, करीसम मल, पित्तम पित्त, सीमहम कफ, पुब्बो पस, लोहितम रक्त, सेदो पसीना, मेदो चर्बी, अस्सु आंसू, वसा वसा, खेलो थू, सिंघनिका, क्या जी श्लीम श्लीम क्या लसिका जोड़ों का तेल, मुत्तम मूत्र, मत्तलुंगनति मस्तिष्क, एवं अयम में कायो, उद्धम पाद तला, अधो केसमत्तका, तच्च पर्यंतो पूरो नानापकारस्य असुचिनो। यह है मेरी काया, तलवों से ऊपर एवं सिर से नीचे त्वचा से लिपटी हुई, पूर्ण रूप से नाना प्रकार की असुंदर वस्तुओं से भरी। नहीं,
Now we listen to a desana by Rodney Smith on Satipatthana, body in body, Kaya Anupasana section.
In preparation of entering this exercises within this, but it's a little bit like having So we've spent 12 weeks in preparation of entering this sutta. I brought it with me tonight, which is a good sign. But it's a little bit like having to learn how to swim through class lectures. You know, when you plunge into the water, all hell breaks loose, right? It's like, what am I supposed to be doing now? So when we start actually working with these different exercises within the suttas, we'll keep bringing to mind the different points that were made in the first 12 classes to keep us aligned with the point and purpose and intention of what we're doing. We can very easily get lost, especially when there is this enormous historical context out of which the sutta is held. And deviation from that context feels like you're breaking one of the commandments. And so we're going to be breaking a lot of the commandments. Because unless this thing has some flexibility and ease and livability, then it's not going to be applicable to our lives. And we want it to be just that. So we're going to be making this relevant to our active and engaged life, because the first word in the sutta is bhikkhu. Bhikkhu means monk. He was speaking to monks. Our life is not monkish or nunnish. And therefore we have to broaden the expanse of this sutta so that it includes our own range of activities. Now, again, just remembering that all of the spiritual journey is to discern the difference between mind activity and awareness. Now, what I mean by that is that from day one, when you sit down to pay attention, you'll notice that the mind is distorting what you're paying attention to in terms of its monologue about what is occurring, as well as the object itself. And so that this sense of mental activity that we bring to our meditation is really we have to clean it out. We have to clean it up. And the spiritual journey is really the journey of cleaning up the noise, so that we don't believe it in the same way we did when we first sat down. So that there's a selfless awareness that is the fruit of the practice, not a self-binding awareness. Now, if I could just use the analogy that's not very accurate but works a little bit, is if you lived in a region of the country that was forever overcast. We won't name any places, but every day you would get up, and if you weren't paying much attention, you would just assume that the nature of the sky was overcast, wouldn't you? You would, in fact, wouldn't consider the sky being anything other than the clouds that cover it. And not being a very introspective person, most of us, when we begin our meditation, have that same thought. We don't really know the difference between the direct experience, the perception of something, and what we're bringing to it, the overcast, the cloudiness of the sky. And we're not actually very interested, or many of us aren't very interested in seeing that difference. And most people in the world live very comfortably within their overcast sky, just assuming that one is the same as the other. Now, if we knew or developed a little suspicion that there was some vastness that we were missing by just seeing the sky as being overcast, then we would start looking more particularly at what that nature of clouds were. Right? And so as we get going into meditation, we start looking at the nature of our mental activity in relationship to the object we're trying to perceive. And the first step on that is to discern the difference between the mental activity and the object that is seen within bare attention. And at first there's a difference. There feels like a difference. There's a difference between the sky and the clouds that the sky holds. But with a little more introspection, a little more depth of sophistication and maturity, we began to see that the sky and the clouds are really one and the same thing. That the composition of the clouds and the composition of the sky really don't vary by much, a little more moisture in one area. But basically the sky is the clouds, and the clouds are the sky. And in the same way, as we venture into our overcast mind, our noisy mind, the object that we perceive and the noise we bring to it at some point hold the same basic raw material. And then you can perceive the sky very differently than you would have when it was blocking or interfering with the space that from time to time you can get a sense of when the clouds part. When the sky is seen as being the same as the clouds, we don't make much ado over the cloud coverage. When we think that the clouds are different than the sky, we make a lot of ado over it. And we can't wait for the sunny days to enjoy, the spaciousness that the sky offers. But after a while, we begin to see the essence of both are the same. And therefore, if the sky is cloudy, the sky is cloudy. And when it's not cloudy, it's not cloudy. And that doesn't disrupt anything. And so, as we sit down to enter our mindfulness and place them and apply them to these particular exercises, we're going to find that our mindfulness contains both cloud and sky, both noise and awareness. Everybody's mindfulness does, because mindfulness, by its very nature, which I've talked about for the last 4 weeks, is that mindfulness contains a mixture of noise and clarity, sky and clouds. And we're not to the point where we have discerned sufficiently that the difference between those, one, nor have we fully understood that the sense of me that is being mindful is the noise that creates the clouds that cover the sky. And that very slowly and with a lot of patience, and an enormous amount of perseverance and wise intention, we begin to see that this thing called noise and that which we are perceiving are all being held by the same sky. And at first, the sky seems very different than the noise, but as these things are actually perceived directly, we begin to understand that the noise and the sky are of the same essence. The Buddha said all things are of the same essence. All things are of one essence. And so that is the journey, that is the spiritual journey. And each of these exercises will hold a variety of paradoxes within that spiritual journey for us to ascertain and to figure. And this sense of thought from the beginning, especially when we're going to be entering the foundation of the body, we begin to perceive that thought has decided what is and what is not the body. It's made that demarcation, that boundary, very clear to us. And we have decided that everything within our skin is called body, and everything outside of our skin is external to body. And we have accepted that cultural indictment of ourselves as being separated by skin from external environment. So there's the internal and there's the external. And we reside very comfortably within that border. And the body line, when we are quiet enough, because if it's induced by thought, it has to be continually asserted by thought that this body is here and everything else is out there, and until it becomes just an affirmed assumption in everything we look at and how everything we believe. And so we rest very, very comfortably within that assumption. And yet, when we're quiet, I mean really quiet, and our meditation, our mindfulness is not carrying the assumption with it by, when it enters the body, knowing exactly where it is, and this is my knee, and this is that, and oh, that's the pain again, and all the contaminating noise. When it's very quiet and it isn't contaminating what it sees with the noise, by God, it's the line of demarcation, the line of boundary line simply is not there. Now we come out of that moment of union and we assert the same boundary that we have always asserted, because it's almost a genetic disposition for us to do that after eons of practice. And we just assumed that we had forgotten it, or just it had slipped out of our mind during that point when we were in meditation, where we were in clear seeing. But the real truth of things is that everything's tucked into this body line and everything outside is not. And when I have made that assumption, when I have decided that that's the fact, the reality, then what comes with that fact is birth, old age, suffering, and death. Just a small thing. Because what is there to die unless we have assumed that fact? What is there that's born unless we have assumed that fact? That fact predisposes us to the laws of death, predisposes us to the laws of separation. Don't assume that fact, and those laws fall to the wayside. Isn't it interesting? But because there's an enormous appeal to hold ourselves within the peanut shell of our body, the incrustation of our belief, that this feels as if it's almost an impossible task to escape it, when really it is a simple releasing of the thought that contains us. So we're already making headway on this question. So we see that what we really have to do is question our assumptions. And that all of these exercises are an attempt to question the assumptions we have. Not to lose ourselves in the exploration of the object, but to look at what the noise we're bringing to the object, the coloration, the clouds, the confusion our noise brings to the object. And that the clarification of the object will come when there is no more noise that we're imparting to the object. We're bringing the boundary to the object. The object doesn't hold that. All of us have had the experience of being on an airplane at 20,000 feet on a clear sky, clear day, and looking down and not even knowing what state we're in, let alone the boundaries that divide that state. The earth just looks completely like a union, a single thing. Or some of those beautiful pictures of the earth from outer space, where it looks like, wow, that planet is so beautiful, I bet everybody gets along there. Says the Martian alien. Right. So this all begins with our ability to listen anew. In fact, all of meditation begins with our ability to listen anew. You see, we falter and we make the mistakes of trying to reassert the assumptions we carry rather than to question the assumptions we carry. And the meditation, when we haven't questioned the assumptions we carry into the way we're looking, will just recertify those assumptions because they will have never been questioned. And so when we're taking on this sense of body, there's a lot at stake in this thing. There's an equal amount of freedom within it, space within it. If I can go to my cosmology series, which I think is very relevant, the material of your body, the elements of the body are actually born from exploding stars. The elements. You are the essence of stars. All of us are. There's only one element that was pre-existing, and that was hydrogen. And as stars burn hydrogen into helium, and then as the bigger the star is, they move helium into all the different elements until they explode those elements out into the wonders and the winds of the cosmos, to become within the gravitational pull of spheres and orbits like our own, to be incorporated into the ground and ourselves born from that ground. We are literally the stuff of stars. And therefore, to the examination, the willingness to examine the essence of ourselves is the access to the whole universe. And the laws that govern the universe, physical laws, are the same laws that govern us here, the ones that are 14 billion years out. Same laws that govern materiality, that govern form, that govern energy, gravity, same as right here on this earth. In fact, if you take the very smallest thing in the universe, a quark or something, a string, and you take the very largest thing, the size of the universe itself, we are exactly in the middle between the largest and the smallest. Is it by accident that has occurred? Or is it an invitation to look inwardly at both the smallest and the largest and come to the understanding of where and what holds each? We can understand the laws that govern the universe by bringing our attention inward and seeing the very laws that govern our mind and body. But it all starts from our willingness to listen anew. We have been programmed so deeply, genetically and culturally, psychologically, spiritually, that we have lost our innocence. We have lost our wonder. And yet you can so easily see the wonder by looking out in space, but we don't see it when we look into the body. Somehow the body doesn't contain the wonder. It contains that lumpy thing called me, which I've never appreciated too much. But look at the stars. What is this body? Really? What is this? Because this is an embodied practice. I hope we all realize that this is an embodied practice. This is a practice born from a complete embodied experience within. And Buddhists in general don't have a very good relationship to their body. They look at it almost contemptuously. If they have anything, it's with their breath. And they say, well, yeah, I know my body. I feel my breath coming in now. Well, the breath is a tangential reference to the body. To come into this thing full-heartedly and to embody ourselves once more, to know this thing for the wonder that it is, not for the terror that we think it to be, is to welcome ourselves into that innocence once more. And this thing will not show forth its wonder unless we bring that innocence to it. If it's like, oh God, that pain again, then where do we think that's going to take us? You think that looking diligently at, oh, that pain again, is going to take us out of that assumption? See, this is an encouragement to see much, much more than our limited expectations and assumptions will allow. And that's why the sutta itself can contain so many references and editorials and commentaries that I hope you just throw all that stuff away. Let's just go into it. In fact, the words of this sutta are not just the words of the Buddha, I don't believe. I believe they've been added to and amended and over the generations in which there were oral transitions. And if you were a monk that had a particular view, you just added a line to the sutta in oral form, and then all of a sudden the Buddha said it. So we have to look at this thing from our own experience to be able to really qualify what is workable, what is true, and what is not. And that's one of the Buddha's main reference points, is that self-reliance that we all need. We're not depending upon him or anything to make this journey work. It's that self-reliance, that independence that he promoted, one of his chief pillars of his teaching. Now we can walk into this thing and look at it anew. Investigating those laws. Being still with the body. Beginning by accepting what we see, because stillness doesn't have an aversive factor. Stillness is still. Stillness isn't still with aversion. It's just still. And innocence and listening is derived from stillness. And so when we're innocently seeing, we're not bringing our aversion to. And we embrace it. First we live in it. We have to first welcome ourselves. We have to have the intention to want to come into this thing. No one can force you into your body. And if you have made a pact to leave it, and you aren't going to re-examine the pact on why you left it, then there's very little chance of you following my instructions and getting back into yourself. It has to come from each one of us, our willingness. Okay, let me come back into this thing. I don't care what the magazine photos look like. My body's never going to look like that. So be it. I can still live as comfortably in it as anyone. Probably better than the magazine models who are anorexic for the most part, as far as I can see. And through our willingness to look and to question everything, including the boundaries of sense of this, the sense of boundary. Where is the sense of boundary? We come to a pre-existing stillness, a pre-existing stillness. To see things as it is, what it really is, the body as the body. The body as the body, not what we have made out of the body. But this is the body as the body. Not what we've added. Well, if I don't add anything, it just could be really boring, we might say. Or, God, if I go in unprepared and unprotected, this could be really terrifying. But neither of those are true. It's not uninteresting. And it need not be terrifying. So the fourth foundation. The first foundation is the foundation of the body. And we're going to start actually beginning to read the text of that as we prepare this thing. But as a reminder that a foundation is a grounding center, a platform for observation. So we're looking at the grounding. They were grounded in these areas, and they give us an opportunity to examine what these areas are. That's what a foundation is. And each of these exercises, not each of them, some of these exercises create direct perceptions, meaning the immediate perception of what is occurring, and some of them are reflective perceptions, like the body aging or the dying or charnel grounds of what will eventually happen to us, and that is to motivate us to have direct perception. So we'll find both of those within the context of this sutta. But all of the exercises are meant to do is to take us from the personal to the impersonal. That's what they're meant to do, to take us out of the equation of what it is that's going on. So that you can see the sky and hold the clouds within it and not be fooled that the space of the sky is any way crowded by those clouds or limited by the number of clouds that are contained within that sky. The sky is bigger than everything is held by it, and therefore it is larger. Okay, so here we go. The physicality of experience. Bhikkhus, lay people, this is the direct path. Direct path means no deviation. This is the actual confrontation between yourself and your belief system, so that you are witnessing and verifying and exposing what it is that you believe in, the direct scene of what you have taken yourself to be. This is the direct path for the purification of beings, for the surmounting of sorrow and lamentation, for the disappearance of pain and grief, for the attainment of the true way, for the realization of nirvana, namely the four foundations of mindfulness. Now I want to stop here because he lays out the principle in the first paragraph. It says this is a direct path for the ending of suffering. And you remember on a previous lecture, I mentioned that there are lots of different ways, lots of different continuums to look at the spiritual journey. You can go from stillness, from noise to stillness is one of the ways, right? Or you can go from the personal to the impersonal is another way. But he's taking the path, which is the central core of the Buddha's teaching, from suffering to non-suffering. And he's saying that that's the principle by which all of these different exercises will be held. So don't let yourself forget what the point is of doing these exercises. That you'll find many rapturous states in which you can bathe and prolong your enjoyment of pleasure within these exercises. But is that creating more suffering? Because when those states are not there, there will be a tension and a contraction that you wish they were. And if you keep in mind that the principle on which this whole sutta is based is that we are going from suffering to non-suffering. And therefore we're going to apply that rule, that principle, to virtually every application that we use. And then we'll be aligned within those applications in a right and correct way. Now, what is interesting, I want to say before we get going here, is that he doesn't first develop concentration. He doesn't have you go off into absorption states and then we're now going to enter the foundation of the body. He just has you go directly into the foundation. No preliminary exercises to steady the attention prior to this. So that we have to find the willingness to steady ourselves within these exercises, but that it's not necessary to steady ourselves staring at a candle flame or reciting a mantra or doing whatever concentration exercises are necessary in order to steady, that these exercises themselves will steady our attention sufficiently. That's an important point. Because as we start moving and speaking about this sutta, you'll hear not the emphasis on steadying one's attention so much as is noticing what is occurring where we're touching that object. So that the awareness is what's encouraged. The mindfulness is what's encouraged, not the concentration element. The concentration element will come along within that observation, but it's not the focal point. The insight is the focal point. This is insight meditation. Okay, so he starts out, and how bhikkhus, lay people, does a bhikkhu abide contemplating the body as the body? Here a bhikkhu gone to the forest or to the root of a tree or to an empty hut sits down, having folded his or her legs crosswise, sets his or her body erect, and establishes mindfulness in front of him. Ever mindful, he or she breathes in. Mindful, he breathes in. Breathing in long, he discerns, I breathe in long. Breathing out long, he discerns, I breathe out long. Breathing in short, he knows I am breathing in short. And breathing out short, he understands I breathe out short. He trains himself thus. I shall breathe in experiencing the whole of the body. He trains thus. I shall breathe out experiencing the whole of the body. Now let me just stop there, because he says, okay, when I'm breathing in long, I'm noticing that I'm breathing in long. When I'm breathing in short, I'm noticing that I'm breathing in short. The quality of the breath, what is the observation of the breath? It doesn't, whether the breath is long or short isn't the point. The point is that you're looking beyond just steadying your attention to what is actually occurring, the noticing, the awareness of what the breath is like. Is it one object or many different objects? Is there a temperature element in that object? Where exactly do you feel the breath? So it's that sense that the awareness, the whole picture of what the breath is doing is what's important. Not just that need to laser beam our way into a kind of steady absorption quality on one point. And he says, not only that, but he says, we start out and we sit breathing in the breath, we notice the breath, but then we also begin to notice the entire body as we breathe out. As we breathe in, we notice the entire body, the whole of the body. This isn't about just the center of our one little belly button expression of our breath. This is the effect of the breath on the entire body, breathing in. The effect of the breath on the entire body, the whole of the body breathing out. So that we have a reference point, we're embodying the exercise. We're not just focusing on the concentration of what the breath is doing. Now, stabilizing the attention is very important, and I've talked a lot about that. That the mind does need to keep repeatedly returning to a sensation and releasing the need to have to think about that sensation. So as we learn to do that, we start cleaning up the awareness so that the clouds are no longer covering the sky so opaquely. That there begins to be the difference between the breath as it's perceived as a direct physical experience and the breath that has the commentary of how I'm doing breathing. Oh, that breath was short. God, last one was longer than I wonder if I'm losing my breath. Maybe I'm getting a heart disease. I mean, on and on we can go and spin out with this thing, just covering the clouds with the sky. It's to stay very simple with this. And the mind doesn't like simplicity. It likes detail, it likes intensity, it likes variety. Well, there can be a lot of variety in how we look at the breath. We can bring that variety and interest in to our breath if we're willing to perceive the breath not just as a focused, single-pointed sensation, but a variety of different sensations that are occurring in the component of breathing in and breathing out. Two key words, three really. One is to discern. I discern. When we understand that awareness itself holds a discerning quality. You see, I discern. The discerning is the ability of the awareness, is the inherent intelligence within the awareness that sees and discerns that the breath is long or that the breath is short. And more you begin to rely upon that basic intelligence that is held within awareness rather than the mental intelligence, the intellectual intelligence that we have with the mind, from the mind's point of view. And that discerning quality is a key reference to the innate ability of awareness, the intelligence of awareness itself. Okay, so let's see here. He trains, I shall breathe in, tranquilizing the body formations. He trains himself thus. I shall breathe out, tranquilizing the body formations. Just as a skilled turner or an apprentice, when making a long turn, understands, I make a long turn. When making a short turn, understands, I make a short turn. So I don't want to get too, but here he's actually encouraging tranquility within the nature of the breath. He establishes, how's he put it? I shall breathe in, tranquilizing the body formations. Now, when we relax together, when we prepare our spiritual journey by relaxing, we are encouraging a tranquilizing, we're calling forth tranquilization. But he's actually going forth. This isn't just the way things are. He's actually encouraging a tranquility or a calmness to come in so that it allows a better environment in which to see. This is a skillful means. This is an encouragement that he's bringing forth that intention can do. And if you want to try it in your sittings, because what you'll find is if you just say, well, let calmness arise with this breath. Let calmness arise with this out-breath. You'll find that calmness does arise through your intentionality. Now, you can get caught in that very easily because calmness feels really good. And you can then make your practice establishing calm rather than establishing awareness of the object. But he's encouraging, at this level, he's encouraging us to establish some calm, not for the sake of the pleasantness of calm, but because when we are calm, we can more easily discern the differences that are arising within the physical sensations. So he's using calmness as a skillful means to see more clearly. If that's confusing to you, let it go. You have to know why he's doing that and what he's asking us to do in order for us to see in a more enhanced and clear way. Now it's interesting here, he says, having put away covetousness and grief for the world, he abides contemplating the body as the body. I like that. Having put away see, that's the setup. Having put away covetousness and grief for the world, he abides contemplating the body as the body. Now, we're not going to turn our attention inward if we are still leaning outward. So what he's suggesting here is that there's a certain maturity that we all need to we all need in order for this practice to even work. We have to have some sense that we no longer believe the world is going to provide us contentment by struggling to gain access to our desires and our neediness for the world, that this is somehow going to bring a full contentment to our life. Most of us have a growing understanding of that fact, But he's really encouraging more understanding, that we have to put away the continuous need for us to reach out and grasp the world and pull it in, for us to ever want to go inside of ourselves and really see what is there. We put away covetousness and grief for the world to abide, contemplating the body as the body. Contemplation in this sense is not a reflection on something. It's that direct perception that we know as meditation. So no longer believing the world will provide that final contentment. And when he says putting away the grief of the world, many of us carry a very strong residue of grief that the world has wronged me, that I have I didn't get my share in life, that events were plotted against my satisfaction, that life didn't work out towards the goals that I sought. That's the grief he's talking about, that residue that many of us carry along with us in our life, that attitude, that basic attitude in which we are disgruntled or despairing about the life that we have lived. He's saying that has to be put away. Not only the covetousness for the world, but also that attitude of coming up less than what I had wanted for the world. I never got my share, Because desiring and grief for the world keeps the world in place. As long as we desire or fear or we're angry at the world, the basic assumptions of ourselves and the world are very fixed and steady within those assumptions, within that attitude. So how are we ever going to cross the boundaries and access and question these assumptions if the very attitudes we carry those assumptions into further and further demarcation? And many of us, if we look, almost all of us, I would assume, carry some kind of attitude in relationship to the world and to the life we live. That this isn't right, I don't know what, the despairing quality of our life and how it hasn't lived up to our ideals. And there's a certain spiritual sophistication here, a spiritual maturity here, where we this is it. This isn't, we didn't pick the short straw. This is it. And we have to deal with it, that's it. We just put everything aside. The fact that I'm aging, my back hurts, that's it. We just surrender the attitude. Or that the life is ever going to be different from that. The back's going to hurt for a long time, probably. Just the way it's going to be. So we get up in the morning, back hurts. Oh, God, how come I have... You stop saying very quickly, this should not be happening to me. That ends. That's got to end very quickly for us to start really questioning the foundation on which this sutta aims and points. Now there are multiple levels of identification when we start entering this body. Many, many different levels. The first level is the image we have of our body. And as we embody our experience once more, as we are willing to welcome ourselves back in, we're going to meet each level of pain body that these images contain. The image of myself, when I look in the mirror compared to other people my age or other people in general. The image of myself from having lived the decades that I have lived and all the scar tissue that is contained in there. Just the particular way that we address ourselves when we look into the mirror. Ugh. Or whatever we might bring to it. We have to be aware of that. We have to open up our attention so that the innocence is there once more. So that we can feel the aversion that we feel about the parts of our body or about the image that is contained within the body. that this isn't big enough and this is too small, and all of the different ways that males and females hold in terms of the cultural induced image as well as the personally felt image. And then there is the psychic pain, psychological pain. Touching the body brings forth an enormous grief of a lifetime. You can't enter the body and not expose yourself to the grief of your years of having lived. It's contained in the tissues. And as we sit contemplating the body, this grief will be felt. Many people, almost everyone at some point, feels the grief emanating from the cells of a lifetime of disappointment, of despair, of loss, of death. And we have to work with these psychological issues. The aversion we have of ourselves. I hate myself. I hate this. That we can't stop there. We can't arrest that as the determined way we're going to perceive ourselves. We have to open that up to further question. What is it that I hate? What is it? Where does this hate? What is it pointing to? What's the pain body? Let's bring forth that pain body. Let's examine that pain body. Remembering that the principles to go from suffering to the end of suffering. Here's the pain. We have to explore that pain with innocence. Re-examine that pain so that it no longer holds the same contraction, assumptions that it used to. And it needs our awareness. So the pain body is exposed when we embody ourselves. Calming body fabrication. So this is the mechanisms. This is the mechanical approach. Here we are, bringing our attention to bear upon the breath and the body, feeling all the different emotions that arise from the body, the different physical sensations within the body, but staying embodied through that whole process, not allowing ourselves to leave the body and journey off somewhere in terms of some image or fantasy, but keeping ourselves contained within the body and feeling that body as the body. What is it? Asking questions that confront the assumptions which those difficulty and that pain hold, ongoing. And working with the mechanics of the breath so that we continue to focus on sustaining our attention, to keep that light shining steadily. And as we focus that attention, we also are aware of the mindfulness quality of where that attention shines, so that we're not just trying to focus the attention and steady it, but we're also aware of where that focus, the qualities and nature of where what we're focusing upon, the nature of the breath, the quality of the breath, the nature of the body, the qualities of the body, the pain of the body, the assumptions that are behind that pain. In this way, he abides contemplating the body as the body, or he abides contemplating the body as the body externally, or he abides contemplating the body both internally and externally. Or else he abides contemplating the body as arising factors, or he abides contemplating the body as vanishing factors, or he abides contemplating in the body both as arising and vanishing factors, or else mindfulness that there is a body is simply established in him to the extent necessary for bare knowledge and mindfulness. And what is all that? All right? So what is that? When you begin to enter the physicality of your experience, rather than the assumptions we made and the story that is associated with those experiences, you see that no experience is a forever. Every experience is in transition, is in movement. So the arising feeling the arising of those experiences, feeling the arising of the emotion, the rising of the pain, the arising of the physicality, and the vanishing, and the termination, and the ending of that emotion, and the ending of that pain, and the ending of that physical experience. And you notice that. It's not a continuous thing. It's not a forever. There's no forever in Buddhism. Everything is in transition. And to start residing and allowing that fact to be known to us so that we can begin to quiet ourselves down and begin to embody the truth of this body rather than the storyline that accompanies it. Bare knowledge in mindfulness. Bare knowledge is insight. The insight. I think that's enough for tonight. Thank you all. Can we just sit for a minute or two? I will. Yes.
हिंदी अनुवाद करते हैं संक्षेप में। आज उन्होंने कायानुपश्ना वाला सेक्शन शुरू किया, उससे पहले उसकी भूमिका बनाई, फिर उसको पढ़ा आनापानसति को। फिर उन्होंने वही कल वाली जो बात हमने कही थी उसको महत्व दिया कि हमको ये ख्याल रखना है कि जो इंस्ट्रक्शंस हैं हम उनकी इंस्ट्रक्शंस की मैकेनिक्स में खो ना जाएं, और ये भी ख्याल रखना है जैसे भगवान बुद्ध ने कहा था कि हमको जो भी शिक्षा दी जा रही है उसको अपने आप स्वयं को असेस करके देखना है, और वो शिक्षा जो भिक्षुओं के लिए उपयुक्त थी उसके अंदर गृहस्थों को भी इंक्लूड करना है। तो इस तरह से जो भी उसमें आवश्यक उनके अनुसार एटीट्यूडनल चेंज की ज़रूरत है वो भी करनी चाहिए। तो एक बात उन्होंने कही कि मन की जो हमारी गतिविधि है उसमें और जो उसकी बैकग्राउंड अवेयरनेस है, बैकग्राउंड की जो चेतना है उसमें हमें फ़र्क करना चाहिए, क्योंकि हम गतिविधियों में इतने उलझ जाते हैं तो हम देख ही नहीं पाते कि जानने वाला कौन है। जो चीज़ जानी जा रही है उसी में अटक जाते हैं। जैसे एक मैंने कहा कोई एक ऐसी जगह रह रहा है जहाँ सिर्फ बादल ही बादल हो तो उसको पता ही नहीं कि स्काई भी कैसा होता है। जब बादल छटते हैं तो तब उसको स्काई दिखता है कि अलग तरह का है, लेकिन और गहराई से जाके देखते हैं तो पता चलता है कि बादल और स्काई एक ही जैसे हैं, थोड़ा थोड़ा भिन्न है कि एक में मॉइस्चर ज़्यादा है, एक जगह मॉइस्चर कम है। इसी तरह से जो हम देख रहे हैं और जो देखने वाला है उसकी भी क्वालिटी एक जैसी होती है। वो बात आगे और समझ में आती है अनुभव के आधार पे। और ये भी समझ में आता है कि जो ये बादल जिसको हम कह रहे हैं, जो उपमा दे हैं बादलों की, वो एक्चुअली अहम के भाव के कारण जो उसमें हम अपनी तरफ से चीज़ें जोड़ते हैं वही एक बादल का रूप करते हैं और हमको ठीक से देखने नहीं देते। और जब हम धैर्य से काम करें धीरे धीरे तो पता चल जाती है कि वो सब एक ही जैसे हैं, क्योंकि भगवान की शिक्षा में कहा जाता है सभी धर्म जो हैं एक उनका एक एसेंस है। सारे धर्म हमको अल्टीमेटली निर्वाण की ओर ही ले जाते हैं। एक और जो बात उन्होंने महत्वपूर्ण कही कि शरीर के बारे में, क्योंकि शरीर सिखाया कि अनुपश्ना है कि जो हम नॉर्मली समझते हैं कि हमारा शरीर यही है जो चमड़ी के अंदर बंधा हुआ है और यही शरीर है, और इससे बाहर जो है वो बाहर है, इसके आगे जो बाहर है और इसके अंदर जो है वो हमारा शरीर है। तो उसके प्रति हमारी इतना तादाद में हो जाता है कि वही हमारे जीवन बुढ़ापा और मृत्यु का कारण बनता है, क्योंकि हम शरीर के साथ अपने को आइडेंटिफाई कर लेते हैं। लेकिन अगर हम बहुत गहराई से ध्यान करें, एकदम शांत हो फिर देखें तो पता चलता है कि जो बाउंड्रीज़ है वो है नहीं। जब बहुत गहरा ध्यान करते हैं तो महसूस होने लगता है कि जो शरीर की बाउंड्रीज़ हैं वो हिलती डुलती रहती हैं, वो एक जैसी नहीं है, क्योंकि सारा शरीर जो है तरंगों का ही बना हुआ होता है। तो उन्होंने फिर उदाहरण दिया जैसे कि हवाई जहाज़ की ऊंचाई से हम देखते हैं तो नीचे ज़मीन पे देखते हैं तो उसमें कोई बाउंड्री नहीं दिखती कि ये एक गांव है, ये दूसरा गांव है, ये एक शहर है, ये दूसरा देश है। बाउंड्रीज तो हम नीचे जाके देखते हैं तब बाउंड्री लगती है। तो वो बाउंड्री जो है दृष्टि के भेद के कारण दिखती हैं, वरना बाउंड्रीज कुछ नहीं है। हमारा शरीर जो है वो भी उन्हीं ज्ञान के अनुसार, जो बिग बैंग की थ्योरी उसके अनुसार जो सब कुछ भी यहाँ क्रिएशन में है वो सब जब बिग बैंग हुआ और उससे स्टार्स एक्सप्लोड हुए, उससे जो एलिमेंट्स बने उन्हीं के कारण है। तो कहते हैं कि हमारा शरीर भी वही है जो सारा जो ब्रह्मांड है उसी से बना हुआ है, तो उसमें भेद नहीं है। तो जब इनकी आनापान पपम की इंस्ट्रक्शन फिर उन्होंने पढ़ी, जो ट्रांसलेशन करके उन्होंने उसमें मुख्य बात बताया कि मैं बेसिकली शरीर के अंदर शरीर को देखना है, कुछ अपनी जैसा शरीर है वैसा देखना है, उसमें अपनी तरफ से कुछ ऐड नहीं करना है। और उसमें बताया कि कई तरह की एक्सरसाइजेज हैं, जैसे मैं मालूम है कायानुपसना में 14 एक्सरसाइजेज हैं जिनका अलग अलग उद्देश्य हैं। कुछ हैं जो डायरेक्ट परसेप्शन की है, कुछ हैं जो हमको रिफ्लेक्शन की हैं, जैसे शमशान घाट में जाना या देखना या उसके बारे में विचार करना। तो उन दोनों का अपना अपना महत्व है, वो बताएंगे। लेकिन महत्वपूर्ण बात यह है कि सारी कायानुपसना का उद्देश्य उनके हिसाब से ये है कि हम काया को अपना न मान के इम्पर्सनल माने। ये बात हमको मुख्य बात ध्यान में रखनी चाहिए। उन्होंने कहा कि सारी शिक्षा जो है आध्यात्मिक शिक्षा का उद्देश्य यही होता है, पर्सनल से इम्पर्सनल की ओर जाएँ, या ये कहें कि बहुत जो हड़बड़ी है, शोर है, उससे शांति की ओर जाएँ, या जो मुख्य बात भगवान कहते हैं मेरी सारी शिक्षा वो है जो दुख से दुख मुक्ति की ओर ले जाते हैं। तो कहते हैं सारी साधना करते समय ये बात हमें हमेशा याद रखनी चाहिए, भूलनी नहीं चाहिए कि जो भी हम कर रहे हैं वो दुख मुक्ति की ओर कर रहे हैं, बाकी चीज़ों में हमें उलझना नहीं चाहिए। जैसे उन्होंने कहा कि इसमें कहीं पे भी ये बात नहीं दी हुई है कि हमको एब्जॉर्प्शन करना, ध्यान करने हैं या चित्त को एकाग्र करना है, बिल्कुल पिन पॉइंटेडनेस करनी है, ऐसा कहीं इंस्ट्रक्शन में नहीं आता। लेकिन उसका वो इसलिए है क्योंकि अगर हम साधना ठीक से करते हैं तो जो हमारे साधना के आलम्बन है उन्हीं को ठीक से करने से हमारी कंसंट्रेशन इतनी बढ़ जाती है जितनी आवश्यक है। ये सारी टीचिंग जो है उनके अनुसार ये इनसाइट मेडिटेशन की टीचिंग है। सतिपट्ठान जो है प्रज्ञा डेवलप करने का मार्ग है, ना कि समझ का या एकाग्रता बढ़ाने का। फिर उन्होंने बताया कि उसमें जो की वर्ड आता है, पहचान आती है डिसर्नमेंट, कि हमको ठीक से देखना है। जैसे वो बाज़ सांस को देखना है, जानना है कि वो लंबा है कि छोटा है, क्योंकि ये हमको अपने बुद्धि के स्तर पे नहीं जानना है। ये हमारी जो चेतना है, अवेयरनेस है, उसकी डायरेक्ट एबिलिटी है कि वो देखती है कि सांस लंबा है कि छोटा है, और उसको बुद्धि के हिसाब से कैलकुलेशन की ज़रूरत नहीं पड़ती। तो उनके बचाइए उनका विचार है कि इसलिए भगवान हमारा ध्यान उस अवेयरनेस की तरफ जाना चाहते हैं। फिर उन्होंने बताया जैसे उसमें आता है पसम भयम काय संखारम, तो उसके बारे में ट्रैंकुलाइजिंग द बॉडी की बात कही कि भगवान हमको ये भी इनकरेज कर रहे हैं कि मन को शांत करें, चित्त को शांत करें, काया को शांत करें, जो कि एक स्किलफुल कुशल उपाय है, ताकि चित्त शांत होगा, काया शांत होगी तो हम अच्छी ठीक तरह से देख पाएंगे। वो इस साधना का उद्देश्य नहीं है कहीं उसी में लग जाएं। फिर जो अंत में बातें आती हैं विनय लोके अविद्या दो मनुष्य, उसके बारे में उन्होंने कहा कि ये भगवान बार बार कि हर इंस्ट्रक्शन में कहते हैं कि जो हमारा संसार के प्रति राग या द्वेष है, जो उसमें तादात्म्य की कोशिश है, जो उसमें सुख ढूंढने की आदत है, उसमें दुख का लिए उसको ब्लेम करने की आदत है, उसको हमको वी हैव टू पुट इट असाइड। विनय लोके जैसे बात भगवान में उसमें आती है। तो क्या बता रहे थे कि जैसे हम लोग अपने जीवन के जो अनफुलफिल्ड डिज़ायर्स हैं, तृष्णाएँ हैं, परेशानियाँ हैं, बेचैनियाँ हैं, इनजस्टिस का भाव है, डिसग्रंटलमेंट है, वो अपने साथ लेके चलते हैं। और वो कह रहे हैं कि सबको छोड़ के चलना है, क्योंकि उसको साथ लेके चलना है। ये हमारे लिए एक तरह की स्पिरिचुअल मैच्योरिटी है कि हम, क्योंकि अगर हम उसको साथ लेके चलेंगे, अपनी इच्छाओं को, काम छंद को और व्यापार को साथ लेके चलेंगे, अविद्या और दो मनुष्यम को साथ लेके चलेंगे, तो उसका बेसिक मतलब ये हुआ कि हमने अपने को मान लिया और संसार को दुख का कारण मान लिया, संसार को सुख के कारण मान लिया। तो उस सारे एटीट्यूड में ही मैं और संसार अलग विभिन्न हो गए, तो मैं का भाव तो फिक्स हो गया। उस एटीट्यूड से काम करेंगे तो कभी भी आप मैं के भाव से मुक्त हो ही नहीं सकते। तो जो भी हो रहा है उसको हमको समझना चाहिए। अगर शरीर में दर्द है, मैं बूढ़ा हो रहा हूँ, मैं परेशान हूँ, तो वो एक प्रकृति का पार्ट है, उसको उस तरह से देखना चाहिए। और हम शक्ल शीशे में अपनी शक्ल देखते हैं तो हमारी नाक ऐसी नहीं है, आँख ऐसा नहीं है, ठीक नहीं लग रहा, चेहरा ऐसा नहीं लग रहा, उस चक्कर में पड़ेंगे तो साधना ठीक से नहीं हो पाती। वो जो ये सब भाव जो हैं डिसग्रंटलमेंट के, उदासी के, नाराज़गी से, अपने से नाराज़गी के, संसार से नाराज़गी के, वो हटा के काम करना है। और बताते हैं कि जो साधना करेंगे तो जो भी हमारे ग्रीफ और साइकोलॉजिकल पेन है वो हमारे शरीर के अंदर दबे होते हैं इतने सप्रेशंस के कारण, तो जब साधना करते हैं शरीर को देखते हैं तो सामने आते हैं। और हमको उसके साथ भी हैंडल करना भी सीखना है इस साधना में, कि जो इमोशन राइज हुए उनको कैसे हैंडल करना है, जो कि सतिपट्ठान सूत्र में उसकी सारी डिटेल में चर्चा आती है। तो बस ये मुख्य बात वो ये फिर उन्होंने दोहराई कि हमको याद रखना चाहिए कि सारी साधना इस सतिपट्ठान का उद्देश्य है दुख से दुख मुक्ति की ओर बढ़ना, और कोई और इधर उधर डाइग्रेशन में ना चले जाएं। सांस को देखने का भी उद्देश्य वही है, शरीर को देखने का भी उद्देश्य वही है। और जो अंत में आता है याव देव ध्यान मता, उसके बारे में मैंने कहा कि बेयर नॉलेज और माइंडफुलनेस। बेयर नॉलेज का मतलब ही होता है प्रज्ञा डेवलप करना, इंसाइट डेवलप करना, क्या है बस वस्तुस्थिति क्या है, बगैर किसी आवरण के देख पाना उसको। तो हमारा डायरेक्ट परसेप्शन है। और वो जो उदय व्यय की बात की उन्होंने, वो उसके बारे में कहा कि जब हम अपने शरीर को ठीक से देखते हैं तो पता स्पष्ट दिखता है, हमारी चेतना को मालूम पड़ता है कि जो भी अनुभव हो रहा है शरीर के लेवल पे या मन के लेवल पे, कोई इमोशन राइज होता है, समाप्त हो जाता है, शरीर में कोई वेदना जागती है, समाप्त हो जाती है, दर्द जागता है, समाप्त हो जाता है, बढ़ता है, घटता है। तो ये हमको स्पष्ट बेयर नॉलेज का मतलब है कि इसकी ओर ध्यान दें और इंसाइट डेवलप करें, प्रज्ञा डेवलप करें कि सब कुछ जो भी अनुभव है हमारे अनित्य है। ये संक्षेप में इसका सारांश था आज के प्रवचन। हम ब्रह्म विहारों की साधना करते हैं। पहले मैत्री ब्रह्म विहार, अपने प्रति मन में अगर चिंता है, परेशानी है, कोई घबराहट है, किसी के प्रति द्वेष है, तो उसको सामने रख के तो अपने प्रति मैत्री भाव, अहं अवेरोमि व्यापज्योमि अनिगोमि सुखी अत्तानं परिहरामि। और अपने प्रियजनों को मन में लाके उनके बारे में यही शुभकामनाएं। मम माता पितु आचार्या च ज्ञातिमित्ता च स ब्रह्मचारिणो च अवेरा होन्तु अव्यापज्जा होन्तु अनिगा होन्तु सुखी अत्तानं परिहरन्तु। अब इस पृथ्वी के लोकपालों के प्रति, रक्षा करने वाले देवताओं के प्रति, आरक्षा देवता, भूमट्ठा देवता, रुक्खट्ठा देवता, आकाशट्ठा देवता अवेरा होन्तु अव्यापज्जा होन्तु अनिगा होन्तु सुखी अत्तानं परिहरन्तु। समस्त प्राणियों के प्रति बगैर किसी बाउंड्री के अपरिमित मेत्ता, अनंत मेत्ता सम्मे सत्ता सम्मे पाना सम्मे भूता सम्मे पुंगला सम्मे अत्ता भाव पर्यापन्ना सम्मा इत्यो सम्मे पुरुषा सम्मे अरिया सम्मे अनरिया सम्मे देवा सम्मे मनुष्या सम्मे विनिपातिका अवेरा होन्तु अव्यापञ्जा होन्तु अनीगा होन्तु सुखी अत्तानं परिहरन्तु। अब करुणा ब्रह्म विहार उत्तरोत्तर दुख बढ़ते जा रहे हैं। अपने शहर की कहें तो वहाँ से शुरू करें और देश भर की कहें फिर संसार की कहें, चारों तरफ दुख की बहुत आयत, लाखों लोग बीमार, करोड़ों लोग घरों में बंद, लाखों लोग रोज़गार से विरक्त हो गए, दूर हो गए। ऐसा था दुख के सागर में करुणा का जागना स्वाभाविक तो है। कुछ परिता चैंटिंग करें। मैं परिता चैंटिंग का हिंदी अनुवाद भी कर देता हूँ क्योंकि कई बार इसको पढ़ने में कहीं समझने में गलती हो जाती है। वचसा मनसा चैव वन्दामे ते तथागते शयने आसने ताने गमने चापि संवदा सदा सुखेन रक्षन्तु बुद्धा सन्ति करातुवं ते हि त्वं रक्षितो सन्तु मुक्तो सर्वभये च। इसका मैं ट्रांसलेशन हिंदी में कर देता हूँ। क्या कह रहे हम क्या रहे हैं, मतलब ये काफ़ी स्पष्ट है फिर भी कि मैं वचन से वाणी से हम सभी बुद्धों को प्रणाम करते हैं, चाहे हम बैठे हों, खड़े हों, चल रहे हों, हर स्थिति में हमारी भगवान बुद्धों के सभी बुद्धों के प्रति श्रद्धा है। और वही बुद्ध जो कि शांति का रास्ता दिखाते हैं, आप सबको प्रसन्न रखें, आप सबकी रक्षा करें और सब भयों से मुक्त करें। तो ये सब हम अपनी एक तरह की सत्य क्रिया कही जाती है कि हमारे में भगवान बुद्ध सभी बुद्धों के प्रति जो श्रद्धा है उसके आधार पे हम ये वाणी कहते हैं। तो यही बातें आप आगे भी हैं, मैं फिर भी इस हिंदी ट्रांसलेशन में कर दूंगा। सब रोगा विनिमुक्तो सब संताप वर्जितो सब वेरमतिकन्तो निवृतो चेतु अम्भव तेषां सच्चेन शीलेन खन्ति मेत्ता बलेन च तेऽपि त्वम् अनुरक्षन्तु आरोग्येन सुखेन च। आप सब रोगों से मुक्त हों, सारे संतापों से मुक्त हों, सारे दुर्भावना से मुक्त हों और जो निर्वाण का सुख है वो प्राप्त महसूस करें, अनुभव करें। और इन सभी बुद्धों के सत्य की पारमी के, शील की पारमी से, खंति की पारमी से, मेत्ता की पारमी से, उन सब के बल से आप सुरक्षित रहें, निरोगी रहें और सुखी रहें। पुरप्थिमस्मिन् दिशा भागे सन्ति भूता महेद्धिका तेऽपि त्वम् अनुरक्षन्तु आरोग्येन सुखेन च। दक्षिणस्मिन् दिशा भागे सन्ति देवा महेद्धिका तेऽपि त्वम् अनुरक्षन्तु आरोग्येन सुखेन च। पश्चिमस्मिन् दिशा भागे सन्ति नागा महेद्धिका तेऽपि त्वमेव अनुरक्षन्तु आरोग्येन सुखेन च उत्तरस्मिन् दिशा भागे सन्ति यक्खा महिद्दिका तेऽपि त्वम् अनुरक्षन्तु आरोग्येन सुखेन च। अब चार जो दिशाएं हैं उनके जो महत्वपूर्ण वहाँ पे सेलेस्टियल बीइंग्स हैं, दिव्य प्राणी हैं, उनकी चर्चा करके कहते हैं वे सब आपको रक्षा कर सकें और आपको आरोग्य और सुख बनाएं। तो ये पहली बात कहते हैं पुरथिमिन, मतलब पूर्व दिशा में जो है बहुत सभी महिद्दिका मतलब महान उनकी इद्दियाँ हैं, तो इस इद्दी के बल पे वो आप सबकी रक्षा कर सकें। दक्षिण दिशा में महान इद्दी वाले देवता हैं, पश्चिम दिशा में इद्दी वाले नाग हैं और उत्तर दिशा में इद्दी वाले यक्ष हैं। वो सब इतने शक्तिशाली हैं, तो इसलिए हम उनसे अनुरोध करते हैं कि वो आपकी सबकी रक्षा करें। अब चारों दिशाओं के जो चातुर महाराजी का देवा माने जाते हैं उनके बारे में बात करते हैं। पुरीमस दिशा दट्ठरत्थो दक्षिणेन विरुल्लको पश्चिमेन विरूपक्खो कुबेरोत्तमं दिशं चत्तारो ते महाराजा लोकपाला यशस्विनो तेऽपि त्वम् अनुरक्षन्तु आरोग्येन सुखेन च। तो ये जो चातुरात महाराज जी का देवा माने जाते हैं, धृतरट्ठ, विरुलका, विरूपक्खा और कुबेरा पूर्व, दक्षिण, पश्चिम और उत्तर दिशा में, तो उनके बारे में कहा जाए कि वो सब इस संसार के लोकपाल हैं, इसके रक्षा करने वाले हैं। वे आपकी भी रक्षा करें और सबकी सुखी और प्रसन्न और निरोगा बनाएं। अब एक कॉमन चीज़ बारे सभी देवताओं के बारे में बात करके, आकाशट्ठा च भूमट्ठा देवा नागा महिद्दिका तेऽपि तुमी अनुरक्षन्तु आरोग्येन सुखेन च। तो आकाश में और धरती में जो भी देवता और नाग हैं जिनकी बहुत महान सिद्धियां हैं, वे सब आपको सुरक्षित रख सकें, आरोग्य रखें और प्रसन्न रखें। तो ये जो है बेसिकली एक तरह की सत्य क्रिया होती है कि हम अपने सत्य के आधार पे जो वचन है हमारे सत्य हैं, उनके आधार पे लोगों का मंगल हो। संबीतियो विवर्जन्तु सुको रोगो विनश्यतु माते भवतु अंतरायु सुखी दीर्घायुको भव सुखी दीर्घायुको भव सुखी दीर्घायुको भव। अब कृतज्ञता ज्ञापन सभी के प्रति जो कठिन परिस्थिति में भी अपनी सुरक्षा की चिंता न करते हुए सेवा कार्यों में लगे हैं। आए हम सब उनके प्रति कृतज्ञता ज्ञापन स्वरूप आभार प्रकट करने के लिए अपने पुण्य उनके साथ साझा करें। पुण्यस्य इदानि याना अन्यानि कतानि मे ते संच भागिनो हन्तु सत्तानन्तपमानका। मुदिता ब्रह्म विहार मन को प्रसन्न करने हेतु याद रखते हैं, करते हैं जिन लोगों को जो दुख से मुक्त हो गए हैं, रोग से मुक्त हो गए हैं, या जिनके घर में कोई प्रसन्नता की बात है जिसको हम जानते हो, या कोई भी और चीज़ जो हमको प्रसन्नता देती हो, कोई हमने चीज़ देखी हो, कुछ काम किया हो, और कुछ नहीं तो बुद्ध रूप को हमको अच्छा लगता हो, उसको देख के प्रसन्नता जागती हो, तो उसको देख के प्रसन्नता जगा के मन में प्रसन्नता को व्याप्त करते हैं, प्रफुल्लित करते हैं मन को। कोई भी आधार बनाया जा सकता है जिससे कि हमको मन में प्रसन्नता जागे, और इस विशेष परिस्थिति में शुभकामना करते हैं कि सबकी प्रसन्नता बनी रहे, कोई भी व्यवधान ना आए, कोई कष्ट ना हो, सुख संपत्ति सबकी बनी रहे। यथा लब्धा संपत्तितो मा विगच्छन्तु। और अब देखा ब्रह्म विहार, सभी लोग धर्मों के स्पर्श में हमारा चित्त कंपायमान न हो, उसके लिए सम्यक दृष्टि आवश्यक, अनित्य बोध आवश्यक, और लोकीय सम्मादिट्ठी के रूप में कर्म सिद्धांत बहुत मदद करता है द्वेष कम करने में, परिस्थितियों के प्रति, लोगों के प्रति जो भासमान सत्य के रूप में दुख का कारण दिखते हैं, तो उसका पाठ करते हैं। कम्मस्य का कम्मदायादा कम्मयोनि कम्मबन्धु कम्मपटिसरण यं कम्मं करिष्यन्ति कल्याणं वा पापकम्म तस्य दायादामविस्सन्ति। और असली समत्व भाव तो तब होगा जब हम ये सच्चान अभेच्च पश्यति करेंगे, चारों आर्य सत्यों को ठीक से समझेंगे, पहचानेंगे, दुख को समझेंगे, उसके कारण को जानेंगे, कारण का निवारण करेंगे। तो एक शुभकामना सभी के प्रति, अपने प्रति, कि हम सब, हमारी सबकी दृष्टि सम्यक हो, ताकि सचमुच में सुख से जी पाएँ, कोई गलत काम ना हो हमसे, किसी से भी। सबे सत्ता सुखी होन्तु, सबे होन्तु चखेमिनो, सबे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु, मा किञ्चि पापमागमा, मा किञ्चि शोकमागमा, मा किञ्चि दुःखमागमा। भवतु सर्वमङ्गलं, रक्षन्तु सर्वदेवता, सर्वबुद्धानुभावेन सदा सुखी भवन्तु ते। भवतु सर्वमङ्गलं, रक्षन्तु सर्वदेवता, सर्वधर्मानुभावेन सदा सुखी भवन्तु मे। भवतु सर्वमङ्गलं, रक्षन्तु सर्वदेवता, सर्वसङ्गानुभावेन सदा सुखी भवन्तु ते। अरहं सम्मा सम्बुद्धो भगवा, बुद्धं भगवन्तं अभिवादि, साक्षातो भगवता धम्मो धम्मं नमस्सामि। सुपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संघ,